Well, and some people are already saying this. My best player available, granted, not necessarily always the highest graded, although I think it is in this case, is Nolan Smith. So my best three available. Granted, I have not watched everyone like tackles and defensive tackles and safeties. So for me, it's Smith, Ojulari, and Kincaid are my three best available. I have Kincaid graded higher than Ojulari, but I value edge rushers over tight ends on my board, just the way I've been ranking them. So to me, and especially looking at the receivers, and actually having gone through receivers today as well, I'm more interested in, if we're not trading back, an edge rusher here. Everyone's saying take Nolan Smith, and I agree. But what kind of discussion do we want to have here about whether we believe that's likely or not?
Yeah, so I definitely want to have the Nolan Smith discussion. I do have the offensive tackles here on the screen just for those who are curious.
Okay.
Anton Harrison from Oklahoma, DeJuan Jones from Ohio State, who's the massive human being, and then Darnell Wright from Tennessee. So for me, like if the Chargers were going to go with a tackle at 21, I think it would be Darnell Wright. But 42 is probably a little too low for him. I think I'll probably end up with him, in the late 20s. But I just think, like I said, I think the value for offensive line is very similar to the receiver group. I think the value for offensive line is probably on day 2. So I'm with you. I think for me, this is Bijan, this is Dalton Kincaid, or Nolan Smith.
I'm an idiot. Yeah, Bijan's best player available too. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. So I do, like I said on Twitter, just barely, Bijan is my highest graded player in this entire draft class. I don't think in this case the Chargers would take him. So this is the Nolan Smith discussion. Obviously tested like a freak this week, jumping over 40 inches in the vertical jump, jumping over 11 feet, excuse me, broad jump, running sub 4.4 as an edge rusher is crazy to me. So the discussion obviously is will he be there? I think there are some teams that would be certain fits for him. I think for me, the team to really watch here would be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I know they took Lucas Van Ness in this simulation. But Van Ness is more kind of a 4-3 defensive end. They obviously run a 3-4. Their pass rush has not been super productive over the last couple of years without, Jason Pierre-Paul kind of taking that step back. And then, Joe Tryon hasn't really developed. So to me, like the Buccaneers would be an interesting Nolan Smith landing spot. Steelers as well. They play a 3-4. But they're I feel like they're good on the pass rush standpoint. So I think it is likely that Nolan Smith is on the board at 21, personally.
It really just depends. There are some great edge rushers in this group. Like if someone falls in love with, Ojulari, obviously, Van Ness, Murphy, like you can't start to push Nolan Smith. I definitely feel like he's within 5 spots of the Chargers range. And I think there's maybe a 25% chance that he's there at 21. And then that's assuming nobody trades up for him ahead of the Chargers or whatever, because if he's there at, 19 and someone really wants him at 25 or whatever, you're almost confident the Chargers are going to take him at 21. So I think it's definitely a possibility. I'm willing to go with it. I think that he's already risen up the boards quite a bit. Like he was in the 40s, I believe, kind of where Ojulari was. Now he's at 27. Honestly, by the time we do this, if we do the same simulation next time, probably won't be there. I feel like he just will keep continuing to climb because he's not the 27th ranked player in this draft. I can't imagine. So I'm fine taking him for now with the sense or the understanding that I'm not really sold that he'll be there. And also I think by the time we do this next time, he'll be off the board, and because he'll be higher on the mock board.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the discussion for the Chargers is obviously like where will the run on certain positions happen? I don't think they're going to be really in the corner market, right? Like I think everyone kind of agrees that the first 3 picks at this point, barring the Trey or pending the Trey Pipkins decision, is edge, receiver, and tight end. And I think the likely position that goes on the run is the edge rusher position. I mean, you're looking at this board right here. There's a lot of fans of Keon White in the league, BJ Ojulari, Isaiah Foskey, Felix Anudike-Uzama, Will McDonald. I would love to have, some of those players on the board at 53, but this is the pass rushing market that we're talking about. So
Yeah.
I think most of these players are probably going to be gone by 53. Whereas at tight end, you have some good options probably in the second round, as much as obviously I would love to
Yeah.
have Dalton Kincaid on the Chargers.
Mhm.
You have Sam Laporta, you have Tucker Kraft, maybe Darnell Washington, although I doubt it at this point. And then receiver, to me, like the value there is definitely like round 3, round 4.
I agree.
And I think to me this is ultimately Nolan Smith versus Dalton Kincaid. And I think as much as I would love Dalton on this team, I think it's Nolan Smith is probably the pick if he's there.
Yeah, I would agree. At some point, Staley does have to invest in a defender in the first round. He's done great to one elite pick, one solid pick, and the offensive line picks back to back. At some point, I think you need to find that next guy. And again, I mean, I guess we should probably talk about why not receiver, why not Zay Flowers, but these edge rushers are going to play. This first round edge rusher, second round, whatever, they're going to play, and they're going to play a lot of snaps.
Yep.
And I would much rather end up with Nolan Smith as my edge 2 than, no offense, but Chris Rumpf jumping into edge 2 or some other, I mean, Derek Tuska, Jeremiah Tauchi. Like, we were at a point last year where we were so desperate, the Chargers couldn't win. And fans said, oh, Staley can't run his defense without Joey Bosa on the field. Nolan Smith will not be Joey Bosa in year 1. But, if you feel like you couldn't run the defense last year without Bosa on the field, then I'd much rather invest in this premium position and just be ready for an injury or to boost the pass rush. The best I've ever seen the Chargers play the defense against the Chiefs is when they had 3 edge rushers, when they had Ingram, when they had Bosa, and when they had Nwosu, because they could stand guys up, move them around. That was the best defense they had. You'd love 2 edge rushers. 3 is even better. The one, Zay Flowers is an interesting one for me because Telesco's never drafted a guy with an RAS less than 7, and most of his guys have a 9.3 RAS or higher. Zay Flowers at that 5'9", 182, and some other numbers that were kind of, average-ish. He comes in at a 6.55 RAS. And so I'm curious if the Chargers would even consider that. A lot of firsts for Tom Telesco the last couple of years. So,
Sure.
hey, they never traded for this player. Now they trade for Khalil Mack. I just don't know with the way they've been doing things. I mean, you look at, the last 3 seasons, it was 9.7, 9.89, 9.71, 9.75 in the first round. The idea that they go for someone like Zay Flowers, as much as I really do like him, I don't buy that they do it this year. And frankly, and I messaged you before the show, there's a negative 40% chance that I'm taking a receiver in round 1 because having gone through some of those like round 2, round 3 guys,
Yeah.
do I think Zay Flowers is better than a lot of them, if not most of them? Sure, absolutely. But I don't think the difference is that significant enough, nor do I think the Chargers even go this route at this point. So I do really like Zay Flowers because I know people will ask us why we didn't talk about him, why we didn't pick him.
Yeah.
But Nolan Smith and even Dalton Kincaid, 2 options that I think are better prospects overall.
Yeah, I think they're better prospects overall as well. And I think, if you look at the Chargers draft history in the first round over the last 5 years, really, if you look at, Kentley Platt, who does the RAS scores, he just did this new feature, right, where you can sort every team by their athletic profiles, right? And it's a huge help.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the best athletes that the Chargers have drafted have all been in the last 5 years. And if you look at their first round specifically, like you're talking about, Tyler, it's Joey Bosa, it's Derwin, it's obviously Jerry Tillery didn't work out, right? But his RS profile is pretty elite. Rashawn Slater, Justin Herbert, even Kenneth Murray has an elite RAS score as well. So, the Zay Flower thing, I think like he's a really good player. And if the Chargers didn't necessarily need like a vertical deep threat, like I think that's really what I'm talking about when I want a receiver for the Chargers. Like you need somebody who could really access the deep parts of the field with their speed. And yes, Zay Flowers can do that. And yes, Jordan Addison can do that. But I'm talking about like a Jalen Hyatt kind of player. I'm talking about like a Trey Palmer player or a Jaden Reed or Tyler Scott, like these players who you can get later. And so for me, like I think Zay Flowers, if you don't have Keenan Allen, 100% go get him. But, as we've heard this week, they plan on keeping him. So I'm a fan of him. I think he's probably the one who has the best challenge for me for wide receiver 1 over Jackson Smith and Jigba at this point. I just haven't necessarily decided if I really want to do that yet. So Zay Flowers is a really high quality prospect. I don't think he checks enough boxes for the Chargers and what they need. Nolan Smith does. And one of the things that people who have concerns about Nolan Smith is like, well, he only weighs 239 pounds. It's like, but he plays like he's 250. If you really watch him and the way that he defends the run, like there's no concern to me. You know, this man is setting the edge in the SEC against guys like Darnell Wright, against all these, you know, high-end tackles. And he pointed this out this week. You know, he goes up against practice against Broderick Jones and Andrew Thomas and all these guys who are NFL offensive linemen. And so I don't have any concerns about his weight. And I think he will, you know, add some at this point. But I mean, you talk about the flexibility it provides the Chargers. You brought up the 2020 Chiefs game, right? Where the Chargers really got after Mahomes really well. In 2021, like one of the reasons they were able to win that game was Joey Bosa working against the guards and how much of an advantage it created for them in that matchup.
Yes, 100%.
So I think Nolan Smith just gives them the most flexibility, you know, short term in the pass rush, long term in the pass rush. I think he's the best player on this board at this point outside of Bijan Robinson. And I think Bijan is a possibility. I just can't see them passing on a pass rusher like Nolan Smith in favor of a running back. So I think for me, and I think we're on the same page, Nolan Smith would be the pick here at 21 for the Chargers.
Yep, I'm happy with that. If he's there, I mean, you saw us jump up and down for Zion. It would be the same thing, to be completely honest, because wouldn't expect him to be there. Great player, checks a lot of boxes. And he was skinny all the way to an average depth of tackle of 0.3. So,
yeah,
like, I think we'll be okay. Are there things to work on? Absolutely. Is it a completely perfect prospect? No. But he's shaping into, even though there's really no such thing, he's shaping into this kind of safe prospect territory. Number one on our composite rankings, tested through the roof, went to Georgia, works with Coach Ed. Like, there's so much that just checks every box. So yeah, I'm completely happy with that. We'll circle back to this in a few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he checks. I think he checks every single box possible for the Chargers, and obviously the Georgia thing. I think is we'll see if it really holds this year. But I mean, Brandon Staley loves, you know, picking from that tree. So for those curious, Will McDonald's still on the board here. Andre Carter, who I'm not necessarily super interested in. I think he's a bit too much of a project in terms of the edge rushers. This is, and then. Ade Tumiwa Adabarwe, I think is how you say it. I'm going to practice that, but obviously lighting up the combine this week. I think for me, he's kind of a more of an inside rusher. He's still on the board here as well, and then some other ones. So Will McDonald, really the only, you know, high end edge rusher at this point left on the board in the second round for the Chargers.
Yeah, deciding to take an edge rusher early, I think you don't want to end up with hoping for the one guy that's left when you pick, you know, 30 something picks later. Like, you don't want to just, oh, I hope he's going to be there. And then, oops, he's not there. Now what do we do? So taking an edge rusher early, I think, is fantastic.